What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Um, Apologize for the delay. Had a couple technical challenges, but we have them ready to go, and I'm excited to be with you all tonight. As you all see, the topic for conversation is the disc advantage, and it's all about how we can um, improve communication, leadership, team performance um, with some proven strategies. For all of us that are leaders within organizations, for all of us that work in whatever organization that we work in, we all have a desire for us to have a level of success. We all have a desire for us to be authentically who we are. And so the challenge is how do we do that? How do we get our best? How can we bring our best every single day? But also at the same time, how can we get the most out of everybody that we're around it with? And so if you're a leader within the organization, uh, tune in. If you're in any type of leadership capacity, meaning that you are helping other people grow and develop in any type of way, I promise this is going to be beneficial to you. My name is Daniel Truelove, and I am someone who specializes in organizational climate and culture. And what that means is that we focus on helping the very essence, the very atmosphere that you walk in, how you feel when you walk into an organization, and the communication, the way in which we talk to each other, the way in which we interact with each other, the leaders that we have within our organizations, they impact all of that environment that we're in. And so the question is how can we get the most out of our environment? So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So if you all can hear me, I appreciate it if you can just give me a thumbs up, just to let me know that you all can hear me. And we're gonna get started and jump on in. And so the question I want to start with is this: is have you ever had challenges with someone that you work with? We all say we wish we could love everybody that we work with equally, but it never fails that we may have some challenges at times with some people. And so the question is, have you ever had challenges, and did you know specifically why you had challenges with those individuals? Sometimes we could say, oh, we just don't like each other, or um, maybe they did something at one point in time to where it frustrated you. You maybe said or did something that frustrated them, and since then it seems like there's been tension. But do you know the reasons why there is that tension? There is a there are behavioral ways where you can be able to identify, oh, this is the reason why certain things that you do are challenging. Certain things that you do may be frustrating to other people. There's also a science, and there's also an understanding of other people that do things. For example, if you have the individuals that you speak to the most, think about go through your call log right now, and all those individuals that you pick up the phone and you're speaking to them, and then in the same time that you are, scrolling through that call log, just think about everybody that has a missed call, which means that you can speak to them a little bit later. Uh, there's a difference between the people that you answer the phone for and those that you can speak to them later. There's a reason why you pick up the phone for the people that you pick up the phone for, because there's a connection. There's something that you all share. And what I'm going to go is go a little bit behind, the lens a little bit and uncover why those things are that. And that is what I call the disc advantage. And so the question remains is this: what exactly is DISC and what does it do? Very simply, DISC measures four things. It measures how you deal with problems, and you can see it up there. It should be on my screen. How you deal with problems, approach problems, and make decisions is the D column. The I column focuses on how you interact, how interactive you are with people, how you share opinions. The S is all about stabilizing. Think about this: how you tend to pace yourself in your environment. If you're someone that likes things that like kind of stay copacetic, you don't like sudden surprises, things like that. And the C is how you are as it relates to established procedures, and that's what the DISC stands for. And so, as it relates to this, we all have certain tendencies in these four areas. As individuals that are, let's say, high Ds, those are individuals, when it comes to problems, when it comes to challenges, when it comes to issues, those individuals, they rush to solve those things. They may not think everything through. while they're rushing to solve those things. And so, therefore, you're going to know how they feel, right? You're going to know what's going on with them. And that individual may come across as very strong, very opinionated. We all have some high D's in our life. Anybody, if you have somebody that you feel like fits this description, just let me know in the chat. Because guess what? Those individuals, you know who they are. Well, actually, I'm going to take that back. I'm going to take that back. I say you know who they are, but that may not 100% be accurate. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. I was doing a training recently, and there was this individual who will remain nameless, and everybody in the room thought he was a high D, and he was not. As a matter of fact, he was on the other end of the spectrum, which was a C, which is the highest area that he had. And you can think somebody is a certain way in a certain area because of the way in which they speak or a way in which they kind of interact as it relates to those things. And so one thing that I do want to share is as it relates to these 4 areas, it measures your tendencies and your preferences as it relates to these 4 things. A lot of times people can miss unintentionally, like kind of like say this is who you are. And it's not who you are, it's just how you tend to do things, how you tend to deal with problems is what the D column is all about. This is how you tend to interact with people is what the I is all about. You have certain behavioral tendencies. Literally, that's what it's all about. And so when it comes to problems, there are individuals that run to problems, but there are individuals that, kind of like are more reflective, more thoughtful before they do things. And so when you have all these different people that are in one environment, and you have people that approach things in a very fast way, you have people that approach things in a little bit more deliberate way, those 2 things can clash, right? And so the question is that since we have ways in which we deal with these 4 areas, the thing is that how do we kind of navigate that? And how do we understand how we're wired, and how do we understand how other people are wired? And the thing that I want to kind of like make a point of right here in this particular moment is that every single one of us has all 4 of these tendencies inside of us. So that means we all have a way in which we kind of make decisions, deal with problems. We all have a way in which we interact with people. We all have a way in which we kind of pace ourselves within our environments, and we all have a way in which we handle established procedures. And so the reality is you have all of these elements that are working at one time. And so the thing that makes it challenging is that when we talk about working within the organization, you may have people that are at different levels. The higher that you're rated at the D level, that means the more demanding that you are. The lower that you're rated in that, it means the more deliberate you are. And that's the same thing for every column. The higher that your I is, that means the more gregarious or the more outgoing you are. And the lower it is, that means the more introspective that you are. And so we're all somewhere on this continuum as it relates to decisions, as it relates to how we interact, as it relates to how we want to be stable within our environment, and as it relates to, our caution or how we deal with procedures. And when you have a lot of people doing things a lot of different ways, it can cause challenges. And so the thing I want to share is that if you do not utilize the DISC assessment to where you can clearly identify what someone is, you can have a misunderstanding of what you think somebody is. The example that I was just giving a second ago, everybody thought this guy was red, and the reality is that he was blue. He was a high C. And the element of being a high C means that you can see right here, they're very cautious, very analytical. Those individuals think quality assurance. They are very assured that they know what's right, they say what's right, and they hold other people to that standard as well. And so when you have someone that knows, and this individual was in leadership, when you have somebody that knows how things are supposed to be done and holds other people to that expectation, and he's speaking about, how he's holding other people to that expectation and calling them out of that, they thought he was somebody that was very decisive. They thought he was somebody that had a, let's say, temper, or somebody that was very aggressive. And the reality is that when individuals weren't operating at the quality, right, quality assurance, which is what C is all about, when they're not operating at that quality level, he does what? He reacts and he responds in a way that may make other people feel like he's very decisive. And so there's a lot of things that can be misconstrued, and everybody in the room was like, I understand you now, right? I understand you so much better because it's situational. All right. It's situational. The situation that we're in brings certain elements out of us. And are we aware of what situations bring what certain things out of people within our lives? Like, so if you have any questions, I'd love for y'all to ask them right now because I want to make sure that we are all together, make sure that we're all on the same page. If you have any type of questions, just let me know, drop them in any time because I would love to be able to share those with you. And so we'll continue on. And so let's go a little bit deeper into this. What exactly, how can we understand like what we are? Like we're not taking a DISC assessment right now. So obviously some of you may be sitting there thinking about, I wonder what I am. So the first thing I'll share with you is this. The first thing that we're going to determine is that if you're outgoing, if you look at the very top of this, right, you see this outgoing over here, north and south, that says reserved. And so if you are more outgoing than you are reserved, that means that you can be either, you only can be either a D or an I. And for this particular, activity, if you're 51%, more outgoing and, 49%, reserved, then that means for this activity, you're going to be either D or I. And so, but if you find yourself like kind of more reserved, let's say more introverted in a way, then you're going to be either a C or S. So that's our first determining factor. The second one is both east and west is that are you more people oriented or are you more task oriented? People oriented mean are you typically around people, enjoy being around them, or are you someone that more so enjoys like getting things done? So if you are outgoing and people oriented, that means that you would be an I. If you are reserved and people oriented, that means that you would be an S. So these things over here, they would be descriptors, for you, or things that may kind of show how you tend to do things. And if you are more outgoing, but you're task oriented, then that means you're a high D. And then that means if you are more reserved, but you're task oriented, that means that you're a C, which is all about what cautiousness and compliance. And so the first thing is like us being able to kind of identify where we are. And when we think about like identifying like what we are as relates to that, these type of things is the reason why we can have challenges, right? And so I just showed you what like outgoing individuals, which were the D's and the I's. We had our more reserved individuals, which are our C's and our S's. And when we put those individuals within an environment, there are these things that can happen called these clashes, right? And the clashes are based upon just the way that we tend to do things. And when we tend to do things a certain way, then we also see other people and the way in which they do things through the lens that we're most dominant in. And so I'll just share a little bit of mine with you. I'm a high I, which is the highest column that I have. And so that means that I'm someone that does very outgoing, someone that is people oriented at the same time. So for anybody that knows me, you know that those two things are definitely kind of indicative of who I am and how I'm wired, right? And so when you take someone like me and then you have somebody that is also outgoing, which is what a high D is, but they're more task oriented. Those two things right there can create a clash. What is a clash? You have one individual that is trying to get things done, and you got another individual that is more focused on the experience, right? More focused on the people, more trying to enjoy the moment, whatever the case may be. Do you see how those two things working together, or those two individuals working together, how they can create challenges, right? How that can create conflict, right? So what is the challenge right here? You see that the key frustration or the challenge that we see within that is that you have one person that is scattered, or let me say this, what the other person is perceiving that person to be. High D sees the I as what scattered and unfocused, and the I sees the D as what dismissive and blunt. And so you have somebody that is people oriented. So if a high D says something that let's say it's said in a way to where they didn't feel like people were taken into consideration, that can impact them. Or if you can say a high D, right, sees the I not taking the task that we have to get done into consideration, that can impact them. And these things this is just only one aspect, right? And these things are happening every day, all the time. How many decisions do you have to make in a day, right? How many problems do you face in a day? That means every time somebody has a decision to make, every time someone has a problem, then that means that it happens every single time, right? And so the reality is that we have these other areas, which right, we have the D and the S. So when we were right there on our sheet, on the previous slide, we saw that the D is what is outgoing, right? But then we have the S; they were more reserved, right? So when you think about that, you have speed, right? Somebody wants to do things very fast, right? Somebody that makes quick decisions, but then you have someone that values stability. And so just thinking about speed versus stability, if you're going 100 miles an hour, right, on the interstate, does that like feel like stability in that moment? No, it feels like a thrill. It feels like excitement. It feels like a lot of things like you're trying to get from point A to point B as fast as you can. Somebody who values stability would feel uneasy in that moment. As a matter of fact, that's very indicative of me and my wife, right? She is an individual that is high S, and I'm an individual that has a high D as well. So I want to do things real quick. I want to do things fast. I want things to be done yesterday, not today. Like that's how I'm wired. And in the way that she wants to take her time. So if I'm someone that is doing something like speeding, she's looking around like there's an uneasiness that she has as it relates to that, right? So think about every time that there's like instability within the environment, what an S feels, right? When there's an announcement that is made that there may be layoffs, so there's something that happens that seems to shake the very security that they feel they once felt. There can be challenges. So every time a problem happens, right, those D's, whether you're high, mid, or low, you approach it in a certain type of way, right? Every time you interact with people in a certain type of way based on what your level is. Every time like we have a task or something that we need to do, some people want to get it done very quickly. Some people are focused on the quality in which they get it done. All these dynamics happen every single day, all the time. And they just create these clashes. They create friction. And so the frustration in the first scenario that I gave is that one person talks too much, right? The other person in this scenario lacks focus. And so if somebody is looking at somebody that type of way, what do we need to do? The D be concise but warm, right? If the D was a little bit warm in this particular scenario, then maybe that in the way in which they communicated, maybe that will impact the way in which somebody that's a high I, them receiving that information from them, right? And so the thing that I want to share with you all, because we're not going to go through all these, this is just providing you something so you can have a little bit of a better understanding and a better context to really feel like, really understand why this is an advantage. Because let's say in the example that I gave, we have some friction, we have a clash, and we could be thinking this because of one thing and it has something completely different in mind. Let's say, for example, we said we have a deadline in 5 minutes, and then you have somebody that gave you resistance instantly. That can be someone that does not do things in a very much so fast way. And so since they now have to speed up the way in which they have to operate, they're resistant to that, right? And so you're like, oh, you don't want to help, or you don't want to do this. And there's all these thoughts that are put into what we feel about that person that is resisting us in this timeline that we have to abide by. And the reality is that they're not typically wired to do things like sporadic. That wasn't on their schedule. They didn't necessarily know that this was going to happen today. And if those things happen, they cause what? They can cause tension. And so we have to learn not just how individuals are wired, but we have to go kind of like underneath the hood, right? We have to really get down to the science and the psychology of the individuals that are around us so that we can truly know, right, who they are, truly know how they're wired, and put them in a space to where the things that we can see at times as negative, they're actually not negative. Because there are many times in our lives with the work that we do that we need somebody that's calm, right? I'm a high I, okay? And with my high I, guess what? There's some times where I can be outgoing. There's some times where I can actually just be focused on get things done, focus. And guess what? My wife does? Slows me down, right? Reminds me to smell the roses, reminds me to like that rest is okay, right? There are many times and many moments in your life, whether it's both professionally or personally, to where somebody that is operating a little bit differently or sees the the world a little bit different than you, then they can balance you out. And we have to see those things as not negative attributes or not negative tendencies that they have, but those things are superpowers. Those are gifts that they have. And when we utilize those gifts together, we can take things from being, from a team dynamic standpoint, from being challenging to us being able to like operate with a sense of like harmony, for us to be able to operate with a sense of respect, for us to really go like embody everything that it means to be a team, which means that you have your strengths, well, we all have our strengths, and how do we put those strengths together in order for us to get the best out of the work that we're doing? All right. So how can DISC not only just improve communication, how can DISC improve leadership? So the first question I would ask is this: what type of organization do you lead? So I was meeting with an administrator one time, and they were frustrated. They were frustrated because of how long it took for individuals to complete things, how when they needed stuff to be done in a certain time, like it was just, we were never able to kind of be on the same page. It was always things where we're dragging along, and they were frustrated about the speed in which the organization moved. And so all the individuals in the organization took the assessment. Guess what we found out? They're a predominantly SC organization. Remember, the first slide I showed you, we had outgoing. But instead of outgoing, think fast, right? Think, Mustang. And the S and C's, those individuals would be like let's say like a Oldsmobile, right? Or a Lincoln, like very classic. That's not something you're gonna put in in a race car race. Like, we're not gonna do that. And so they operate on two different types of speeds. And so the principle was a high D. And so guess what? Speed matters to them. And they're wanting the individuals within their organization to operate at the same speed that they operate with. And now they are setting themselves up for failure, and they're putting an expectation on the individuals that are around them that they cannot meet. Think about that. Having an expectation for a 1957 Lincoln to go out there and race a 2025 Mustang and win. That's not a good expectation. That's not a smart goal. And so one of the things that we did is when she saw this, it was like, oh my goodness. This is why, aha moment, this is why you need to make sure that you're putting them in a situation for them to excel. So putting them in last minute situations, that's not good. Give them time. Allow them to be able to schedule it out. And if you do that, they will produce some of the best work that you ever had. But throwing things on them last minute is not setting them up for success. It is not setting you up for success as a leader. And so it can improve it in that way, because now that I know the type of organization that I lead, I can now start making adjustments, right? So when you think about like the overall organization, like you have a certain leadership style, but does that like leadership style, is it able to adapt to the big moments, which is how do I lead everybody? But is it also able to adapt to those individual moments to where like you're having a one-on-one with me, or there was a challenge and you know how to address that with them? Do you have like an adaptable leadership style? Meaning that you can do things, and a lot of people in a lot of type of ways can be like, okay, this is just how I'm wired. This is just how I do things. But in moments to where that high D needs you not to yell at them in front of everybody, and you're wondering why there was an explosion, or that high I needs some validation, or that S needs for you to actually support them and feel like you're with them 100%. That C needs more details, or needs to know that like the work that they do is done at a quality level. When you're literally having those individual moments to where what's required, are you able to pull those out when they're needed? There's one thing for us to lead an organization and understand that, but it's another thing to be able to adapt in moments where it's needed. And you as a leader, right, we could have like very much so a way that we feel works, right? We can have a way that we have done things for a long period of time. And the reality is, just because it's been successful before does not mean that it will continue to be successful. Just because, it's worked doesn't mean that we cannot do things in a way that literally can improve, enhance, multiply what we're able to do with less effort because we know how to get the most out of everybody. I think like a coach, I played sports, and when I think about this kind of scenario, I think about a coach knowing how, like there's coaches that can get all in someone's face and they respond to that, but you can literally do that to someone else and they shut down. Like knowing like how to get the most out of your people, knowing exactly what button to push that allows for them to thrive, allows for them to like be motivated and encouraged to step up and do their part. We have to know those things, and we have to understand like how can we identify what other people need, because it's one thing to know it, it's another thing to do it, right? So when the moment applies, do we want to know what that person needs, or are we guessing? Are we drawing off of what worked well for this other individual that was in a similar situation? Well, that other individual that was in that same scenario, that what advice, that approach that you may have taken, it worked for them. But what if the person that is in that same scenario now is wired differently, and that same feedback that you gave, that same strategy you gave that worked for somebody else, it does not work for them? That means that we can now have, I won't say outdated, but just like it's not a scientific or a behavioral approach to leadership. It's more so like a one-size-fits-all approach to leadership. And we all know that not everybody responds to everything in the same way. And so how this improves your leadership is done in a way to where like eliminating the guesswork, eliminating like trying to figure this thing out. Think about knowing what your staff needs. Think about knowing what your team needs. Think about knowing what your organization needs without even having to ask the question. Like, yeah, growing up, there was a lady who used to be on TV, Cleo. She was quote unquote psychic. Obviously, she ended up being a fraud. But I think about moments like that to where like she would claim that she knew certain things. But in a way with this, it's not a claim that is like undocumented or it's unfounded. It's proven. It's factual. You can literally know what your team, what your organization needs in the moment when they need it. And that's how it can improve that. So what exactly is the disadvantage, right? And so in order to know what the advantage is, we have to also like step into or think about what are the disadvantages that we have. Think about like when communication does break down. So like, do we even know like the communication styles of the individuals that we are trying to like patch these things up, or there's some conflict and we're trying to, fix these things? Do we know, are we able to identify like what their style is, or are we just kind of utilizing the same thing over and over again? So how can we try to improve communication without knowing the styles? Like that's putting you at a disadvantage, right? Think about like having kind of like a one size fits all type of approach like to your leadership, and being able to now saying, I can have an adaptable leadership, right? I know each individual, what their style is. I know how to communicate with them. I know how to motivate them. I know what I can do to encourage them. I'm able to identify those things. And now what this does, it puts me at an advantage versus just trying to kind of rinse and repeat and do things that you've done that work well. But we all know when we get new teams, we have new players, and it takes a little bit something different in order for us to excel. Depending on what industry you're in, you experience this, right? You experience that what used to work, in year 1 or maybe year 5, at year 10 in leadership with a new group of individuals, it may not be working as well as it did. And it's not because you're not a great leader. It's not because, your strategies have lost its touch. It's just that maybe if you had different insights with the same strategies, it would work a little bit different. Different insight with the same strategies could work a little bit different. And so the last two things I'll talk about were just like motivation. I remember there are different moments. I almost said one specifically, but different moments to where I think about leaders in my life, and also moments where I was in leadership, and I thought that a certain thing would motivate somebody, or this certain button I can push. And I just think about the misses that have happened in my life, and also as a leader, the misses that I've had, and it was all based upon what? A lack of information, a lack of understanding. I feel like if I had known the things that I know now back then I would have been able to operate with another level of precision, or be able to lead in a way that was beneficial to the individuals that were like in my leadership, the individuals that were trusting me in order to get them from where they at to where they wanted to go within their career. And I utilize all the information now to now go and assist other leaders that are in those same positions to know that there's a better way that we can go about doing this. Like we can literally utilize these advantages to our benefit on a daily basis, and it's not as challenging as you think. It's not as difficult, and it doesn't take a whole lot in order for us to do that. Last thing I think about is just that, like, if you've ever given someone a task, a responsibility, and you've been waiting for them to get that back to you, and you wonder like, why is this late every time I get that? Like sometimes we're literally in organizations having roles that don't motivate us. Um, you as a leader, I promise you, there's some things that you have that are responsibilities, and there are some of them that you're more motivated to do than others. And we utilize the DISC, but there's also another assessment we utilize to kind of tap more into this that gets into those drivers and things that kind of that make you wake up, like the things that get you excited. And the reality is, like these advantages, you can utilize them to identify why there have been certain challenges that you've had in the past, but also at the same time, what are the things that we can do to identify where we're at and put together a plan that's going to take us to the next level and take us to where we desire to go. Because our goals and objectives do not change. We still have to accomplish those. How can we make sure that we get the most out of our leadership? How can we make sure that we get the most out of ourselves? How can we make sure that we get the most out of the individuals that are around us? And the DISC advantage, which is what I call it, is a way for us to do that. And so at the very end of the day, I think that operating in a level of authenticity is something that's super important. Um, One of the studies that were done, it showed that individuals that ascend to the highest level of success in everything that they do, they had two things in common. One, it was awareness. The second thing was authenticity. So they were aware of who they are. They were aware of what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and they were able to operate with a level of authenticity. And so this is my DISC assessment. I'm putting it out there so you all know. Earlier I told you all I was a high I, and you can see that it's the highest one on it. But at the same time, you can see how I deal with problems, how I interact with people, how I tend to pace things. As you can see, I'm not someone that likes to, take my time. I'm someone that's very spontaneous. I like to do things, in a way to where things change up at times. Like higher in that green area, those individuals like for things to be more predictable. And in the last area, when it comes to procedures, and that's already established procedures, like the example that I gave earlier with the speed limit, that's an established procedure. You see mine is at the very low, but my wife's, hers is at the very top. So when I see the speed limit is 55, I think, well, who made it 55? Right? Who put that in play? My wife thinks I need to make sure that I go that. Is it right? Is it wrong? No, nothing is right, nothing is wrong. We're all wired in a certain way. And the more that we can understand ourselves, which is that self-awareness, and the more that we can have other awareness of those individuals that we work with, interact with on a day-to-day basis, it literally allows not only for us to be our best, but allows for other people to be their best as well. It's knowing, no guesswork. And so I wanted to take this time to get on here to talk about these advantages, because I do believe that these are things that can impact you individually in your organization. It can impact you outside of work, personally, whatever relationship dynamics that you have. And if anyone would like to know more about how the DISC advantage, how these assessments can benefit me, how I can make sure that not only am I able to impact the individuals that are already within my organization, but think about bringing the right people to your organization. That leader that I was talking about earlier, wanted a certain type of people, certain type of person added to their leadership team. And guess what we're able to do? We're able to go out and utilize the assessments to find the right people, but also work on those individuals that are already there to make sure that we're doing everything that we can for them to be authentically who they are. Because when we're able to show up in only a way in which we're able to do things, that's when we're at our best. Nobody can do you like you do you, and nobody can be someone else like they are them. The challenge is when individuals aren't allowed to be themselves, or individuals maybe not even aware that this is the way in which they're wired. And that has happened on many occasions to where we're doing an assessment. It's like, oh man, this makes so much sense. And now I understand something that I may not have understood before. And so these aha moments are the things that we live for, because the more that people are aware, the more that people know, not only for themselves, but also, I see why she does that. And now we have people that have been able to make amends, to be able to, um, walk over like bridge some, what is it, build some bridges where there was some kind of had been torn down before. And now we have individuals that are like reconciling because they understand this. It wasn't anything that was about them. They just misunderstood something, and now they have a better foundation to build upon. And so, with that being said, I would love to stay connected to all of you all out there. Listen, if you have any questions about anything, feel free to send me a message. I live this. I love speaking about all things that deal with connection, all things that deal with communication, how we can work well together, how we can literally like stay committed and do the things together that will allow us to be successful in doing them. And so with this, you can connect with me. Also, my presentation, you'll be able to receive that. And I want y'all to be able to have these resources in order for you to continue to go and be great. And so I want to say to everyone that joined me tonight, or everyone that will watch this on a replay, I thank you so much for your time. I thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to share this. And I'm looking forward to continuing to make an impact. And these Tuesdays, they're a thing. I was here on here last Tuesday. I'm here today. And I really want to share with as many people as I can how they can continue to get the most out of their leadership, how they continue to get the most out of themselves, and how they continue to get the most out of the environments that they work in. This is Daniel Truelove. I'm here for all things organizational climate and culture, and I'm excited for tonight. Hope you all have a good one. Until next time.